All right, so I watched Ariuna's on Theology Unleashed. He had an analysis of the debate between Howard Resnick and Matt Dillahunty, and I said, I was really interested to watch their analysis, and that I was going to make a review of their analysis. So this is kind of that. It's more kind of summing up where we're at in the whole process. I learned a lot by watching these three guys. So what you had was of a series of videos, 4 videos at this point. You had Ariuna talking to Aaron Ra. All 3 of them are Hare Krishnas. Okay, you had Ariuna talking to Aaron Ra. Then you had Josh Wolf talking to Tom Jump. Then you had Dr. Howard Resnick debating Matt Dillahunty. Now, it was really instructive to watch these guys. Why? Because I have no dog in their fight. Okay, I'm not rooting for them to prove they're Sky Fairy at all. What I'm watching, it was really instructive to see them because I'm watching to see how it translates and what can be learned from watching them trying to, prove their Sky Fairy to the same type of people. So, what did I learn? Well, the first thing that was the most interesting observation is Matt Dillahunty has, when he was debating Howard Resnick, he goes into Matt Dillahunty wrecking ball mode. Now, this is something he does time and time again with Christians, and he uses this to devastating effect with Christians. Show me the goods. Show me the money. Okay, that's all well and good, Dr. Howard Resnick, but prove Krishna to me or go home. He does that a lot to Christians, and that's one of his main arguments in his wheelhouse, and he uses it in against Christian apologists to devastating effects. One point in videos to come, I'll have an analysis. Matt Dillahunty has 2 or 3 tricks up his sleeve. It's really all he's got, but he uses them really, really well. And he uses them, interchanges them skillfully within the context of a debate so that people don't even notice. That's kind of a street tactic thing, so people don't even notice that he shifted gears on them necessarily. Now, I have no dog in the fight. Again, I don't want them necessarily to prove Krishna consciousness to anybody. But I can listen to plain English, and I listen to all 3 of them, so I can tell you what about their arguments makes sense and what Matt Dillahunty should have agreed to and listened to. Why? Because I have no dog in the fight. So I can tell you straight up, okay, that you should have yielded there and you should have yielded there. The only one who was really honest, had a real conversation with them, was T. Jump. By far. Aaron Ra was ludicrous. He just sort of insulted Ariuna and belittled him and tried to make him look like an idiot for an hour and a half. 2 hours, and then called it a night. Oh, see, these guys are just stupid as the Christians. That's basically what he did. Let me show you, you're just as stupid as the Christians, just ranted and raved. T-Jump had a real conversation with them. That's why I suggested to Ariuna you should get T-Jump together with Dr. Howard Resnick. Why? Because it's really, really useful for us, the practicing Christians. There is a fully realized, not quite epistemological warrant, but there's a fully realized justification that all 3 of them more or less were coherent on, that was articulated pretty well, believe it or not, and made complete sense to me. So, what is that? In other words, if Matt Dillahunty had been fair, which he wasn't, and if he had yielded some territory which he should have yielded, he treated the whole thing like a zero-sum contest. Let me put points on the board for atheism. Let me show you that the Sky Fairy doesn't exist. Demand that he shows that that Hare Krishna, show me the goods or go home. Prove Hare Krishna to me or go home. Now, Tom Jump brought that up a few times too, but he also, in the context of a fully realized conversation. So in the fully realized conversation, Dr. Howard Resnick was trying to elaborate on a lot of things that were epistemological in nature, but more expansive. So he touched on philosophy of science, philosophy of religion, things that were actually really, really, really par for the course and right on topic and right on point. Because what he was trying to say, not in so many words, there's a lot here, so I'll try to cut to the chase. But one of the things he was trying to point out is that Matt Dillahunty is in the tail end of a movement known as scientism, wherein he heavily overvalues empiricism and scientific revelation versus other types of revelation. Now that's a real legitimate philosophical point that actually needs to be addressed and hashed out and conversed about. Matt Dillahunty didn't converse about it, didn't want it. He just kept going back to show me the goods, show me the Sky Fairy, go home. Now he uses that to devastating effect against the Christian community. All the time. All the time. And it wasn't just his behavior that I was objecting to. It was the fact that there was more to it that needed to be talked about that Dr. Howard Resnick was trying to bring to the table that is totally related that Matt Dillahunty wasn't having. Me, the neutral observer, could see that clearly. So he was offering, all three of them were offering a pretty coherent justification for the things they believe. It wasn't quite an epistemological warrant. It wasn't proof of Krishna. They didn't prove their sky fairy. I didn't sign up for Hare Krishna. But they gave real answers that satisfy certain criteria as to why they practice the things that they practice and why they do what they do and what can be achieved by it. Interestingly enough, and this was really useful for me, the Christian, to watch, because it was actually really pretty strong and really pretty coherent. I'm a fair-minded listener, guys, and if they're speaking sense and I can discern what they're saying, I will, and Tom Jump would have too. That's why I said there was answers there, and they were giving really coherent answers, and it breaks down something like this. I'm going to tie all three of them together in the same package because they're all sort of saying the same thing. Really only one false note out of all three of them, and that was Josh Wolf. You know, for some mysterious reason, Josh Wolf included in their discussion that he, I guess, thinks he can control the minds of ants. I'm not sure, Josh. That one was a little out there. Other than that, all of it corresponded to each other, all of it correlated with each other, all of it made sense. And it was pretty clear and pretty consistent. They all said roughly the same thing, and it was a really actual an answer. So, what is that answer? It was a values-based answer. Why, how do we know that what you believe is true? Roughly, the answer of all three of them was, if you take our Krishna consciousness training course, okay, over the course of 5 years, you do our chants, you practice, you read our scriptures, you listen to our sermons as per our instructions, you will become this type of human being at the end of 5 years. That was the real answer, and it was demonstrated by all three of them because they were all sort of like what they were saying that you would turn into. It was a values-based answer. So they were saying roughly, if you take our courses and you do our thing, okay, you are going to become more detached from the material world. They would probably say less egocentric, okay? You're going to become more saintly. You're going to be more compassionate, kind, caring for other human beings. You're going to recognize your connection to other human beings. Now, just in that alone was a really coherent answer. Now think of this in terms of what these debates are ultimately all about. When I'm debating an atheist, or when you are debating an atheist, you got to be thinking in terms of putting points on the board for Christianity. You're not just there to dither around. You're there to move the ball in favor of the Christian community, right? Or at least you should be. So you should be thinking about that the entire time. I know most of you don't, but you should. So let's say someone independent of hearing about Krishna consciousness, independent about hearing the values that they say will become planted in you if you follow their traditions. And not only was that the answer, but it actually corresponded to the reality in front of me of all three people. Not only is that a real answer, it's a values-based answer, it's not an epistemological answer, but it's a real answer, and it corresponded directly to the behavior of all three people. So I said, yes, that rings true, and yes, I believe them, and yes, if that's what you're looking for, that's what they got. So, let's say independent of their promptings, you, whoever you are, had decided, fed up with the rat race, all anybody cares about in American society is making money, and it's just not for me. The values of American culture are starting to weigh on me, it's just not enough. And people are too mean-spirited. This is a real thing that could happen to a real person, independent of them. People are too mean-spirited. My job, everyone's on everyone's case, and I'm just sick of life like this. There's got to be something more to life. Then you go and you hear them talk about the Krishna consciousness. Those values would correspond to something that if you thought those values were actually really good and meaningful and correct values, you'd be like, you know what? Let me give a listen to these guys, sign me up for some of your courses. They would put points on the board for Krishna consciousness. The only reason it wasn't successful, in terms of that actually them achieving that somewhat, is because nobody ever heard of these guys before. It's not mainstream, it's not Christianity, it's not mainstream to most of the people clicking in. They're like, Krishna consciousness, what is that? Aren't those freaky guys who dance around the airports? And sure enough, they're going to have to do some of like, well, yeah, we used to do that. That's what we used to do. But now we're different. Now we're all philosophical and we're just about value. You see what I mean? So somebody tuning in who's none the wiser about Krishna consciousness, and that would basically be everybody, wouldn't get it. Not because they couldn't get it, it wasn't there to get, because it was just too far outside of what is considered mainstream Americana or mainstream. Now, give the same answer in a Christian context. It's a fully realized values answer. North of proving God in a debate. In other words, if Matt Dillahunty says, show me the money, prove that God exists, and I go, okay, here. Here you go. And angels come down. He's like, I'm sorry, Jesus, I'm sorry, Jesus. North of that happening, the most possible powerful apologetic that you could, the most powerful, convincing, and real defense of Christianity that you could possibly give is a values-based apologetic very similar to what they're talking about. And in Christianity, it would work. It would put points on the board. It would put points on the board. In other words, the only reason it didn't work for them is there's no such thing as someone going around kind of leaning Krishna. They'd never heard of it before. But there are a lot of people floating around these debates who are somewhat leaning Christian, who are appealed, find Christianity somewhat appealing, but have some objections. That person goes and clicks into a debate where you are nailing it on all 5 cylinders on just a values-based appeal. You put real points on the board. They'll be like, sign me up. Sign me up for your church. I'm interested in what you have to say. That's what will happen. Would have happened to Krishna if Krishna stuff isn't so, as far as everyone knows, left field. It's true. Why? Because they gave real answers. And if you thought those values are appealing, they actually corresponded with how they act. Do you see what I mean? I'm not sure if I'm saying this all that well, but they were giving a values-based answer. This is why you believe in our proof of concept, because after a certain amount of years, you're going to become more detached from the material world. You're going to be less egocentric, less involved in the rat race, and you're going to become a more saintly human being. You're going to be a kinder, more compassionate, more caring human being. If you actually thought those were truly important values, you'd be really interested in what they had to say. Do you understand? You would. Why? Because it rang true with who they were. Now, the reason why I say they should talk more with Tom Jump is because Tom Jump would see all of that. He's not in the business of trying to jerk people's chain. Matt Dillahunty talks about truth and corresponding to reality. Every single solitary thing I just said corresponded to reality. None of it is proof that Krishna is God. All of it is a values-based argument that would, if you thought those values were right and true and worthy to walk out, you'd be interested in what they have to say. There's no reason for Matt Dillahunty not to readily assent to all of that. The fact that he didn't is not points in his favor. It shows lack of integrity. It shows he's just trying to fakely put points on the board. Fakely. Inauthentic defeaters, something I'm going to talk about a lot. It's what atheists do all the time. Inauthentic defeaters. Defeating something that they don't need to defeat. They can just listen and agree. A lot easier. Why? Because they are talking about something that roughly corresponds to truth. And you can listen and agree and go, yeah, that's true, that's true, that's true, which a reasonable person does, hello? But that doesn't prove Krishna. So then you ultimately still get to the point that Matt Dillahunty was trying to get to, prove Krishna or go home. Ultimately, Tom Jump did say that, prove Krishna or go home. How do we know Krishna's real? But in the meantime, you can have a real conversation with them where you get some insight into their worldview. Do you understand? An insight into their worldview based on what they actually believe and what the values they actually hold, corresponding to reality. That's why I get along with people so well, guys. Why? Because I listen to what they're actually saying, and I match it up with how they're behaving, and I go, yeah, that rings true. Why? Because that seems like who you are. It's not complicated. They were giving a defense of why they live the way they live that actually makes sense, given if you think the values that they represent are really important. Then you go, yeah, I agree with that. And their values do correspond roughly to some types of Christian values. Humility, I'm sure they're big on. We're supposed to be big on it. Detachment from the material world. There's a strand in Christianity that says, come out from amongst them, be ye holy as I, the Lord, am holy. That's a similar type of idea. So there's a lot of things that they're talking about that correspond directly to values that Christians should either be trying to acquire or attain to. Now, why is this so useful for Christianity? Because the values-based argument for Christians is the most powerful thing in our wheelhouse. Short of proving God to somebody, it's the strongest thing we got. And it will work. It will work 100 times out of 100. Why? Because you don't have to bend reality to prove it to someone. All you have to do is actually practice what you preach. Duh! That's it. That's all you got to do. You don't have to bend reality. You don't have to, make pretend an ark. All right, I won't go there. Make pretend an ark held thousands of animals and, held every animal. You don't have to prove anybody anything that they aren't willing to believe. All you have to do is actually practice what you preach in terms of the values of Christianity. And those values are readily available to most people in the Western culture. Part of why Jordan Peterson was so astonishingly successful so quick, even though he wasn't a Christian, is that most of what he was trying to talk about, he recognized that there were values embedded in Christianity, values-based argument. I call it the sociological utility of religion argument. It's the strongest one in our wheelhouse. Why? It's basically irrefutable. He recognized that there were values embedded in Christianity that were really important to the development of Western civilization. And you throw out Christianity, you throw out the baby with the bathwater, there's a really good chance of that. And from everything, the evidence of your own eyes, that's pretty much, if that's not absolutely demonstratively true, it's a really strong, solid case. And you don't have to prove that God exists to prove that. A lot of atheists would agree with that just based on, that's why a lot of atheists already think that that's right. That's why he got that's why he got so far so fast before he started having all these whatever issues he's dealing with. And he was along the same lines. Jordan Peterson was influenced by some of the people who influenced these guys. I think influenced these guys. Iliada, William James, the names I mentioned. Joseph Campbell, Karen Armstrong, is all sort of batting around the same wheelhouse. But there's a really strong values-based argument for Christianity. And coincidence of coincidences, why social conservatives got so much traction back in the 80s and the 90s. Because there's a reality to some of it. Yes, they went too far. And yes, sometimes those people are paying. But there's a reality to some of it. If you grew up in the 80s and the 90s and you actually saw how much American culture was really getting a little bit too out of control, I can testify that with my own eyes, guys. You weren't there. Trust me. Trust me. The time I graduated from high school, I'd already tried LSD and crack cocaine. And I wasn't considered a junkie or a drunkie at all. It wasn't even close. That's scary. And that's not my fault. That's the culture's fault. That's scary and that's not my fault. That's the culture's fault. Because again, I wasn't wildly out of control. I mean, I was out of control. Sure, I was a little out of control. I was a rowdy teenager, but I was not considered a druggie. No, the druggie kids were really far gone. They were scary, man. They were fried. They were fried. One of the druggie kids had started taking LSD when he was 7th grade. 7th grade. He turned into like the scariest person on planet Earth by the time he was in high school. I swear to God, he turned into like a walking nightmare. He was the scariest, Why? Because he fried something really, 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 at a young age, he fried something fundamental. And that's about that's the values-based argument. That's all the social conservatives were pointing out or recognizing. Wait, this is getting a little out of control. American society is going insane. Now it got a little better. That was the 80s, it was peak insanity. In the 90s, then it started calming down because people recognized that drugs were actually destructive. As the hype suggested, they actually had a dark side to them. Lo and behold. But all I'm trying to say is Peterson arrived on the scene, and he got a lot of traction really quickly because he noticed that there are, in order for a society to function as a real society, a healthy society, there's got to be sacred values and principles and ethics that we all adhere to as a culture. Once those start to fall, forget it. Once those start to fall, forget it. Right now, even First Amendment, even free speech is under assault now. Free speech, can you imagine that? Free speech goes, forget it, we're done. All of us are done, collectively. Why? Because if that's not a sacred value, we're iced. We're iced. And if you don't recognize why, you don't understand. Go think about it. I shouldn't even have to explain that. Once upon a time, I wouldn't even have to explain that in the United States of America. Why? Because that was a sacred value that everybody adhered to. That's the point. That's what religion produces in people. Sacred values that everybody adheres to and everybody tacitly assents to. And if you don't have those as a society, you're screwed. And we're seeing the beginning stages of that today. The values-based argument for Christianity is extraordinarily powerful, guys. Why? Because it's real, whether you believe in God or not. A lot of people, including a lot of atheists, have recognized they don't want to live in hell on earth. and you get too far down the path of chaotic values and colliding worldviews, and you create hell on earth. That's what it leads to. Society falls apart. There was a book about it, or there's at least the title. I don't know the book is who's it? Chicha. What is his name? Things fall apart. The center cannot hold. There's a poem about it, famous poem about it. Mere anarchy is loosed upon the world. The center cannot hold. The best lack all conviction. The worst are full of passionate intensity. Gee, what does that sound like? The worst are full of passionate intensity. That's William Butler Yeats called The Second Coming. Does that sound like today? Does that sound like Twitter? The worst are full of passionate intensity. Gee, what's that sound like? Where we live right now, today, on the doorstep of hell on earth. And part of the reason we're there is because there is no longer any sense of shared values or purpose. And what put it there originally was religion. There may be a way to do it without religion, but I doubt it. I doubt it. There may be. That would be the argument from Matt Dillahunty or someone, secular humanism, blah, blah, blah. Replace it with secular humanism would be great. Okay, well, get going. Replace it with secular humanism. Hurry up. Why? Because some people on your side of the argument are going insane in the meantime and burning down the world. Hello? Burning down the world. Protect us from them, please. So, anyways, yeah, I got a little long-winded, but there's a real point there. If you thought their values are something that you wanted to adhere to, there was a really solid epistemology, not epistemological. Epistemology is about show me Christian or go home. Now, they didn't do that either, and they do hem and haw. When they say show me Christian, they do start to go, you just got to feel them in your heart. They do kind of give non-answers like Christians give. Just got to feel, you got to experience them. There's a real answer buried in there. But there was a real justification for the lifestyle that they have adopted and the things they believe and the things that they actually passionately adhere to and fully kind of walk out and live behind. And it was really easy for Matt Dillahunty to have assented to all of that in a conversation, agreed to it. Why? Because it was really obvious. The fact that he split hairs over is stupid, wasting everyone's time. Honestly, wasting everyone's time. Because there's a real conversation to be had about all that stuff. And it isn't from the point of view, oh, it's just fairy tale nonsense. Woo, it's not. It's not at all. It's not even close. So that's why I said, put Howard Resnick up with T. Jump and they'll have a real conversation. That will get somewhere. Howard Resnick is going to be debating Graham Oppie. That should get somewhere, except Graham Oppie Graham Oppie's really hard to understand in these debates. If you can keep Graham Oppie focused on plain English, sure. Other than that, So, the point I'm trying to make, and yes, I admit I got a little long-winded, but there's a really important, if we're doing apologetics, okay, there's a reason why things take off. There's a reason why ideas take hold. There's a reason why Jordan Peterson appears on the scene, and within a year he goes from like 50,000 subscribers to 1.5 million. Because he was right in the important part of what's actually at stake, of what's actually real about this stuff. In order for you to believe the ontology, you have to experience the ontology. I cannot demonstrate the ontology to you. The only thing I can do is give you the tools to evidence it for yourself. Do you understand that? I cannot, you say, prove Jesus is real to me. I cannot do that. But I can actually walk out the values of Christianity in a convincing and clear way and really mean it, practice what I preach, and you can see for yourself, I want to be that type of person. That's a real convincing, powerful argument, and it will convince the unconvinced. Because that is what they are looking for more than anything else. Give me something to believe in. Something to live for. Something that makes sense, something that I can actually, go, yeah, that makes sense. So if they see it embodied in you, how the Christian would say it, if they see Christ in you, the hope of glory, they see it in your behavior as Christ-like. They see that you actually convincingly adhere to this stuff in a real and meaningful way and actually informs you. It does really fill you up with a sense of meaning, purpose, and peace. You can demonstrate all of that. You can demonstrate all of that. That's a much more fully realized argument than just show me Jesus or go home. Matt Dillahunty always tries to break it down to the epistemology. He does that on purpose. Why? Because that's the weakest part. That's the weakest part of a strong lifestyle, or I don't even know if it's, whatever the argument I'm trying to talk about is a values-based argument. It's really strong, and it can be really, really fortified and strengthened so that it's really powerful, really real, and really convincing to people, even if they don't believe the ontology. They'll believe you believe it, and they'll see it acted out in you. And they'll go, hallelujah. That's what the Bible even tells you to live, guys. That they may see your good works and praise your Father in heaven. Anybody read that part? Did you forget to read that part? I forgot to read that part, Greg. Okay, well, read that part. Because that's what it says to do. They're supposed to see your good works. See the conviction in you. See the fact that you are living for a higher ideal and higher set of principles and values. See that fully realized in you, which you could actually easily demonstrate, is my point. You don't have to demonstrate the ontology to demonstrate that you actually fully believe the principles and practice what you preach. You don't. You don't have to at all. You don't even have to come close to demonstrating the ontology. The ontology is a tall order. It's a tall order. But they can easily see that you 100%, live for those principles when the lights are off and nobody's around. You pray and you try and become a better person as commanded by the scriptures. Why? Because you are holding yourself to a higher standard of accountability. They could easily see that in you. Because that's something that's real. And that's all I'm pointing out in them. It was easy to see in them that they actually believe their cockamamie, their crackpot, sky fairy, gobbledygook. They actually believe that crap. Yeah, they believe it. Their crackpot, sky fairy, gobbledygook. And they were all consistent. They were all on the same page. And it was a values-based argument that was actually pretty well thought out. Actually, it was really coherent. That's why I said I learned a lot from it. I'm the neutral observer. I don't want them to prove Krishna to anybody. Right? But I can hear plain English and sense cogent ideas, and it all made sense to me, everything they said, and it all corresponded with each other. So there was very little inconsistencies in between all three of their testimonies. It all registered basically the same idea. And it'd be really easy for Christians to watch them and translate that into Christianity. And go, okay, values-based argument. This is what I live, eat, sleep, and breathe, and this is how it demonstrated in my behavior, and I really mean this, and I'm really committed to this. And even if you don't think Jesus is really God, you'll see it acted out. You'll see the improvement in my behavior. As I've said many times, my brother-in-law became a Christian on the spot when he saw a change in me. It immediately corresponded to a really deep, convincing change in his behavior towards other people. Immediately. He became more Christian. He became more, all of a sudden he's calling up my sister and caring about her well-being a lot more than he ever used to. That's something that every Christian can do and embody and demonstrate. And then you put points on the board. Easily. Easy points. Easy points. Simple. Simple to do it that way. I think this all made sense. Yeah, I admit I was talking fast. That's what I do. Rant and rave. But I think it all made sense. I don't know. Before I post this video, I'll listen to it over again. Did I take right there make all that much sense? It might have. I admit, I think there's the core of a really, really powerful apologetic in here. Like I said, north of proving God on YouTube, north of me demonstrating something, performing a miracle, something like that, this is the strongest argument in the Christian wheelhouse. And it can be polished up so that you can bring it time and time again. And every single time you bring it to the table, you will have 3 or 4 people going, tell me more. That's what I'm saying. Put points on the board. Easily. Why? Because it's actually deeply, truly what people are really looking for. A sense of meaning and purpose, sense of values. It's a real argument, guys. A really, really deep, powerful, convincing argument. So, that's how I see it. They nailed it. They nailed it to a certain degree. If people were leaning Krishna, the reason why it's not going to work for them is there's no such thing as somebody out there leaning Krishna. Nobody's going like, I wonder what the Hare Krishnas have to say about this. It's just a little bit too weird for most people. But if you had already decided independent of them that the values that they start talking about are the really good values of life, there's some of their influences in our literature, guys. Read Thoreau, Walden. I bet you $1,000. I don't know. They're westernized a lot. A lot of the stuff they said, there's a lot of through lines going out throughout Western literature, Western ideas. There's a lot of stuff that corresponds to things that we already have read, studied, know about. So it's not that far out of the box. It's just, again, not many people are leaning Krishna, walking around leaning Krishna, whereas a lot of people listening to this might be leaning Christian. Right? A lot of people who are listening to these things are kind of in the undecided middle, and they might be leaning Christian. They might be almost deconverted, but there's a couple things about Christianity that they still really like. Usually that corresponds to values more than anything else. So I said, I'll flesh this out really well in videos to come, because this is the whole thing. There's only two really strong arguments in the atheist wheelhouse. The only reason why people think it's powerful because they use them really well. Show me the money. That's argument number one. That's Matt Dillahunty. He wields it really well. And let me do a propaganda campaign on Christian values. That's it. That's the only two things they got. The reason why it's been successful is because they play both of them really well. They play them really well. Show me the goods. Show me the money. Prove Jesus or go home. Prove Jesus or shut up. That's one argument. And the only other thing they got, propaganda campaigns against Christianity. Undercutting the values of Christianity. You guys are homophobes. Wow, the Old Testament's full of all these nasty scriptures. How can you worship a thug like God? This God is mean. Hello? Does that register with anybody? It's only two. It's only two things they got. The reason why it's been successful is because they played both those cards really well. That's why. It's really why they played them well. They did. But anyways, so that is all for now, kids. I will elaborate in future videos. Check out I doubt anybody's going to watch all three of the videos. I think they're worth watching, and I watched the analysis. I think they're worth watching. I'll probably get Ariuna or Josh back on the channel pretty soon, going over some of the stuff anyway, so you'll have more exposure to it. So, goody. Oh, goody, Craig. Something to look forward to. Yeah, something to look forward to. Oh, goody, Craig. That's going to be great. Yeah, it's going to be fun, Stephanie. Oh, thanks. I can't wait. Stephanie's psyched. Stephanie's psyched for it. Yeah, it's going to be great. I really like hearing about these Hare Krishna guys. Craig, I really think they're interesting guys. See? Stephanie's on board. Well, good. It's good to know. All right, guys. That is all for now. The Mass has ended. Go in peace. Amen.